The day began like any other for the people working inside Earth's orbital defense network. Most of them believed the hard part of their work was already behind them. The enemy fleets had been gathering at the edges of the solar system for weeks, and everyone was focused on tracking the approaching threat. Their screens showed constant motion, constant warnings, constant updates. No one expected anything new to happen. No one expected anything unplanned, but sometimes the most unexpected things appear at the quietest moments. The shift was calm, almost slow, when a junior operator noticed something strange on her monitor. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a signal. It wasn't even something she knew how to describe. At first, she thought it was a glitch, maybe a reflection from the moon or one of Earth's satellites. But the more she zoomed in, the more she realized the anomaly wasn't disappearing. It was growing. She called her supervisor over. He tried adjusting the scanner, thinking the system was misreading something. Then he frowned when the strange reading became clearer. It wasn't just a random fluctuation. It was a controlled energy. Build up. Something was hiding in the moon's shadow, and now it was powering up. Within minutes, the calm room turned tense. Officers rushed to stations. Analysts pulled up old archives. Technicians reset their equipment, making sure nothing was malfunctioning. But it didn't matter how many systems they checked, because the truth became impossible to ignore. Something enormous was sitting behind the moon, and whatever it was turning itself visible. Alarms didn't go off. No sirens rang. The system wasn't programmed for this type of event, because no one had ever seen anything like it before. The display simply changed color, marking the object as unknown mass. That alone was enough to make the room fall into a worried silence. People exchanged looks, but no one spoke much. Everyone knew the enemy fleets were days away. Everyone knew Earth was already struggling to prepare. That meant one thing. If this thing was another hostile ship, Earth was in deeper danger then. Anyone had guessed. The anomaly grew brighter on the screens, its edges sharpening. The decloaking effect was slow, almost graceful. It looked like someone peeling away darkness itself. A massive object was pushing its way out of invisibility, its outline becoming clearer every second. The supervisor finally broke the silence when he whispered, "This isn't enemy design." But he didn't sound relieved. He sounded confused, even a little afraid. The enemy ships they knew, angular, sharp, covered in harsh metallic structures, looked nothing like this. The thing appearing on their screens had smooth, sweeping curves. It moved with quiet confidence, not aggression. But that only made the moment stranger. If it wasn't the enemy, then who could it be? The room began to buzz with quiet voices. Some thought it might be a forgotten satellite. Others believed it could be a natural object hidden for centuries. A few even suggested it could be a trick, a distraction created by the enemy to break Earth's defenses from within. The more theories they came up with, the more nervous everyone became. The decloaking continued, revealing a design no one in the room recognized. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien from any known species. It looked ancient, yet far more advanced than anything Earth had ever seen. Smooth surfaces reflected faint light. Strange symbols ran along its sides. The whole structure seemed to hum softly, as though it wasn't just a machine, but something alive in its own way. The commander of the defense station entered the room as soon as he heard the reports. He walked straight to the center platform, taking in the image on the large screen. His face didn't show panic, but the tension around his eyes said enough. He had spent his entire life studying ships and threats. He had seen every type of vessel Earth knew existed. But even he had no idea what he was looking at. He asked a single question. "Is it hostile?" No one could answer him. Teams ran quick. Scans. They checked for weapon power buildups. They listened for communication signals. They monitored for sudden movements. But nothing came. The ship simply sat there, fully decloaked, as if waiting for something. The commander finally ordered the network to send a standard safety broadcast 1 used when unknown objects approached Earth. It was a simple message, nothing threatening. Identify yourself. You are entering protected space. State your intentions. Everyone held their breath while waiting for a response. Seconds passed, then a minute, then 2. Silence. Only the soft hum of machinery filled the room. Some operators leaned closer to their monitors. Others adjusted their headsets. Everyone was listening for even the smallest hint of a reply. Then it happened. The communication feed crackled. A faint tone echoed through the speakers, so soft that people weren't sure if they imagined it. The tone repeated, clearer this time. Then a voice calm, steady, and unmistakably translated into Earth's language. We are here to assist. The moment those words echoed through the room, it felt like the air froze. People exchanged looks of disbelief. Some were confused. Others were hopeful. A few were scared. No one knew what assist meant. And no one knew if they could trust a ship that came out of nowhere. The commander looked at the main screen. Again, he wasn't foolish enough to immediately believe a stranger in space. But he also understood something important. If Earth had one more enemy, the planet might not survive. But if this new arrival was actually friendly or even neutral, it could change the coming war completely. The message repeated a second time, and this time the voice sounded more certain. We are here to assist. The commander ordered the communications team to respond. He kept the message careful and calm. Identify your origin. Who are you? Why have you come? More silence followed. Operators watched their monitors as, though staring hard enough would force the ship to speak. But again, the ship gave no immediate answer. It simply hovered in the moon's shadow, quiet and still. Meanwhile, deeper scanners finally started picking up details. They detected no weapon systems powering up, no attack formations, no signs of the enemy fleet lurking nearby. Instead, the readings revealed something else entirely technology more advanced than Earth had ever seen. Its energy signature didn't match any known alien species either. It was familiar in a strange way. But none of the analysts could explain why. The junior operator who found the anomaly whispered, "It almost looks human." The supervisor shot her a look, part surprise and part disbelief. Human ships didn't have cloaking devices. Human ships didn't hide behind the moon in silence. Human ships didn't appear out of nowhere with designs that looked centuries more advanced than Earth's best technology. But still, something about the lines, the markings, the proportions, they didn't feel foreign. They felt like an echo of something Earth once lost. No one spoke for a long moment as that idea quietly settled over the room. Most didn't believe it, but the thought lingered. The ship finally sent another message. But this time, it wasn't just words, it was coordinates. Coordinates pinpointing Earth's command frequency, a channel only Allied forces used. A channel no outsider should have known existed. This made the tension rise again. How could they know their protected frequency? How long had they been watching Earth? Why did they decloak now, when the enemy invasion was so close? The commander didn't allow panic to build. He ordered teams to keep scanning the ship and prepare defensive measures just in case. But he didn't shut the ship out either. Deep down, he sensed this wasn't a random event. Something bigger was happening. Outside the station windows, Earth rotated slowly beneath them. Clouds drifted over the oceans. Lights flickered across the continents. Billions of people carried on with their day, unaware that a mysterious ship had appeared a few 100,000 kilometers away. They didn't know Earth's future might be changing at that very moment. Inside the defense room, the operators returned to their tasks, though their hands shook slightly. They updated databases, taking notes on every reading. They tried analyzing the design of the vessel, though nothing matched the archives. They listened for more messages, hoping the ship would speak again. Then, just when people began to believe the ship might stay silent forever, the voice returned. We come from far beyond your borders. We are not your enemies. We have returned to protect our origin world. A whisper moved through the room. Origin world. Protect. These were not words an alien species would use. The commander stared at the screen, the tension in his shoulders slowly shifting into something else, confusion, mixed with a faint, alarming sense of recognition. If what the ship was suggesting was true, then Earth was not alone in the universe. Not just because of aliens, not just because of enemies, but because somewhere out there, humans had survived in ways Earth never imagined. And now, they had come back. The commander took a slow breath, knowing this moment would be remembered for generations. He looked at the ship, now fully visible in the darkness of space, and spoke quietly but firmly. Prepare full analysis. This changes everything. And somewhere behind the moon, the mysterious vessel remained still, watching Earth as though returning home after a very long time. For the next several hours, Earth's orbital defense network was busier than it had ever been. The unknown ship still hovered in the moon's shadow, calm and still, as if it were waiting for Earth to process what had happened. Every station, every department, every system was rushing to understand who or what this new arrival might be. Down on Earth, inside a secure research center, one of the senior analysts stood in a dim room filled with old archives. She had spent most of her life studying lost missions, abandoned expeditions, and unexplained events from humanity's past. She always believed that history hid more secrets than people realized. But even she wasn't prepared for what the Defense Network sent her. A detailed image of the mysterious vessel. She zoomed in on the markings along its side. Curving lines, smooth symbols, shapes that seemed almost familiar, like they belonged to a human language, but had evolved into something different. She felt a chill run up her arms. She had seen something like this before only once, buried in a forgotten archive that hardly anyone remembered existed. Her hands shook slightly as she searched the shelves behind her. Thick folders, old handwritten reports, yellowed pages that hadn't been touched in years. Most people thought these files were nothing more than stories. She used to think that too, until today. She finally pulled out a thin, dusty folder. The label was faded, but still readable. It mentioned a mission that left Earth centuries ago, a mission no one ever confirmed successful. The expedition was meant to explore deep space, beyond known borders, but contact was lost soon after launch. No debris was ever found. No final message was ever received. Eventually, it became nothing more than a mystery, one of those strange stories people bring up but never take seriously. She opened the folder carefully, afraid the papers might tear. Inside were rough sketches of the ship designs from that long-lost mission. They weren't exact matches to the unknown vessel, but they were close enough to make her heart thump harder. The same curves, the same smooth structure, the same front projection that looked more artistic than mechanical. She whispered to herself, "This can't be real." But the more she compared the designs, the more real it became. The ship hiding behind the moon wasn't alien. It wasn't a trick from the enemy. It wasn't something Earth had never seen. It was something Earth had lost. If that ship came from the vanished mission, then the people inside it were human. Not humans from Earth today. Humans who had evolved somewhere far away. Humans who had lived generations without contact. Humans who might have built entire worlds of their own. It was an idea so huge, she had to sit down for a moment just to breathe. Meanwhile, in the communication control rooms across Earth, Debates were happening. Some were scared. Some were hopeful. Some believed the ship was lying. The fear was understandable. No. One knew if this new arrival was truly friendly, or just pretending until the enemy showed up. At a time when Earth was desperately trying to prepare for a massive invasion, one wrong guess could be the difference between survival and destruction. But something strange kept bothering the specialists. The ship wasn't acting like a threat. It hadn't moved aggressively. It hadn't fired anything. It hadn't demanded anything. Instead, it remained still, sending careful messages only when Earth reached out first. It was patient, almost respectful. That alone made everyone think. Harder. Meanwhile, the senior analyst from the archives rushed to share her discovery with the defense leadership. She explained everything she found, how the lost mission left hundreds of years ago, how its design matched the mysterious vessel, how the markings on the ship looked like an evolved form of early human symbols. She didn't say she was certain. She didn't pretend this solved everything. But she stood firmly behind her conclusion. It's possible this ship belongs to descendants of that mission. The room fell silent when she said it. People exchanged unsure glances. A few whispered. Some didn't believe it at all. One of the older strategists finally spoke. Even if they are human descendants, we don't know what they became out there. We don't know their intentions. That was true. A lot of time had passed. A lot could have changed. Maybe they developed advanced technology. Maybe they built powerful civilizations. Maybe they fought wars of their own. Maybe they survived dangers Earth couldn't imagine. But then came another thought, one that hung heavily in the air. Why return now? Why decloak right before Earth was about to be attacked? Why use the word protect? Back in space, the unknown ships. Crew watched silently. They didn't send more messages. They didn't move. But sensors showed their vessel was fully active, running systems Earth didn't understand at all. The structure of the ship didn't even follow typical engineering logic. It looked like it belonged to a future Earth had never reached. When the commander of Earth's defense forces saw the archival images, he didn't hide his reaction. His eyes widened slightly. He wasn't someone who believed in wild theories, but this time the connection was too strong to ignore. If the discovery was true, then this was the first recorded moment in human history when a lost human branch had returned. And they had returned not as strangers, but as guardians. He asked the research team to continue digging for more evidence. Every old file became valuable. Every small clue mattered. Analysts worked without rest, trying to piece together a timeline. The more they uncovered, the stronger the theory became. There were old journals from the original mission's crew, handwritten notes describing their dreams of finding new worlds. There were early sketches of experimental engines that were far ahead of their time. There were mentions of cryosleep experiments, long-distance travel techniques, and strange star systems they hoped to reach one day. Then there were the last recorded words from the mission's incomplete transmission. If we succeed, humanity will not remain alone. Those words, forgotten for centuries, suddenly felt alive again. The defense leadership replayed that line over and over. A mission lost in deep space, a ship that vanished, a promise that someday humanity would reach far beyond what people could imagine. Maybe the promise wasn't broken after all. While the research continued, communications specialists tried again to speak with the ship. This time, they asked questions more carefully, hoping to gain trust. Your message said you are here to protect Earth. Why now? What changed? A long silence followed. People leaned closer to their screens. Some held their breath. The tension was thick, but it wasn't the fear of an attack. It was the fear of not knowing the truth. Finally, the reply came through. The voice was calm, gentle, almost familiar. We have watched from afar. The danger approaching your world threatens our origin as well. We return because it is time. Origin. Return. Time. These words struck something deep inside everyone. If the ship's crew had lived out there for centuries, they might see Earth in a way Earth no longer saw itself. Not just as a planet, not just as home, but as the birthplace of their entire existence. The communication team continued gently. Can you tell us where you come from? Another pause. Then a simple answer, far beyond the borders of your maps. The specialists didn't push further. It was clear the ship wasn't ready to share everything yet. Trust takes time even across generations of humans separated by space and history. Meanwhile, the analyst in the archive room kept working through old reports. Each document she opened made the story clearer. It looked like the lost mission had not only survived, it had thrived. The early sketches showed technology concepts Earth never implemented. If those concepts transformed over centuries, then the unknown vessel made sense. It wasn't alien. It was simply the result of human innovation pushed far beyond the limits Earth ever reached, and now those descendants had returned in Earth's darkest hour. By nightfall, whispers began spreading across the defense network. People weren't afraid anymore. They weren't confused. They were curious, thrilled even. The mood shifted slowly, from tension to cautious hope. No one wanted to say it out loud, but the idea kept repeating in their minds. Earth might not be facing the enemy alone. That night, as Earth spun quietly in space, and billions of people slept without knowing what was happening above them, the unknown ship remained steady behind the moon. Lights glowed softly along its surface. Symbols shimmered faintly. It watched over Earth the way a guardian watches its homeland. And down below, the analyst whispered the words written in the old journal, as if speaking to the ship itself. You were lost, but not forever. She closed the folder gently, holding it to her chest. The truth was becoming clearer with every passing hour. The ship wasn't just returning from the stars. It was coming home. The mysterious ship still stayed behind the moon, silent and unmoving, almost like it was waiting patiently for Earth to fully understand what it had just done. Even though the ship had already sent messages saying it came to assist people on, Earth still felt unsure. A message was one thing. A real conversation was another. If this ship truly carried descendants of humans who had left Earth centuries ago, then talking with them could be one of the most important moments in history. Inside Earth's main defense center, the atmosphere was both tense and hopeful at the same time. Operators sat at their screens, listening carefully for any small change from the unknown vessel. Engineers studied the energy readings. Linguists tried to understand the tone and structure of the ship's translated messages. Everyone knew that the next steps would be critical. One wrong move might scare the visitors. One careless question might shut down communication completely. In the middle of all this, a senior officer received a direct order to lead the first live contact attempt with the ship. He wasn't chosen because of rank, but because he had a calm presence, someone who could communicate without sounding aggressive or desperate. Earth didn't want to look fearful, but it also didn't want to appear threatening. Something about balancing those two feelings was incredibly delicate. He took a deep breath as he stepped into the circular communication chamber. The lights dimmed around him, and the large holographic screen lit up in front. It displayed the ship's last known location, drifting like a giant shadow behind the moon. He adjusted his headset and nodded at the technician controlling the channel. Begin transmission, he said quietly. A soft beep signaled the start. This is Earth Defense, he said, his voice steady but warm. We received your message. We understand you say you are here to assist. We would like to speak with someone from your vessel. We only seek peaceful communication. Then the transmission ended. Everyone waited. The room stayed silent except for the faint hum of equipment. Some operators leaned forward. Others held their breath. Even the officer who sent the transmission felt his hand tighten around the edge of the console. A minute passed. Then another. Just when people started wondering if the ship would answer at all, a soft tone filled the chamber. It echoed like a distant bell, smooth, calm, and very controlled. Then the voice arrived, the same gentle voice they'd heard before. "We hear you. We are prepared to speak." The officer nodded to the technician. "Open live channel." Static. Faded. The voice returned, clearer than before. "You wish to learn who we are. We understand your questions. Your world has changed many times since our departure." The officer replied carefully. "Yes, you said you know this world. You called. It's your origin. Can you explain what that means? Are you connected to us?" A pause followed. Far longer than before. It almost felt like the person on the ship was deciding how much to share. Maybe they were choosing their words carefully. Maybe they were trying to measure Earth's emotions. When? The voice returned. It sounded heavier, as if carrying memories from a long time ago. "We are descendants of those who left your world generations before your oldest records. Our ancestors launched an expedition into deep space, driven by hope, not war. They did not intend to disappear. But distance changed everything." The officer leaned closer. "You survived out there?" "Yes, we survived. We struggled. We adapted. We built. Over time, our technology changed. Our bodies changed. Our ways of life changed. But one truth never faded. We understood where we came from. We remembered our beginning." Some of the operators exchanged looks. It was real. It was true. This was not an alien species pretending to be related to humans. These were actual human descendants, people whose great-great-great ancestors once lived on Earth. The officer continued. "Why return now? What made you reveal yourselves?" Another long silence filled the room. It wasn't tense, just thoughtful. "Your world stands on the edge of a great danger," the voice said. "We sensed the movements of those who approach. We faced them. In distant reaches long before they reached your space. They are not easily stopped. We know the cost of facing them alone." The officer felt the weight of those words. If these distant humans had already fought the enemy, then they knew exactly how dangerous the invasion would be. That meant this ship wasn't just arriving out of kindness. It was arriving out of experience. He asked, "If you have faced them before, then did you win?" The voice didn't answer immediately. When it finally spoke, it sounded softer. "Victory is not the word we would use, but we endured. We protected our worlds. We learned how they fight. And we learned that unity is the only way to resist them." The officer nodded slowly. He understood. These people weren't saviors arriving to take control. They were survivors coming back to stand with Earth, not above it dot in the main control. Room engineers were still studying the ship's exterior. It was hard to believe humans built something like that. The smooth metallic surface, the gently glowing lines, the stable energy field that didn't flicker or spike. Everything about it showed skill far beyond Earth's current level. A young engineer whispered, "If this is how advanced humans can become, what else is possible?" Back in the communication chamber, the officer asked another question, not an aggressive one, not even a strategic one, just a human question. "What do you call yourselves?" For the first time, the voice shifted slightly, almost like the person speaking felt a hint of emotion. "We call ourselves the lineage," a reminder that no matter how far we traveled, no matter how different we became, we never forgot the line that connects us to Earth. Several people in the room exhaled quietly. The name wasn't grand. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't even technical. It sounded personal. like they chose it to honor something meaningful. The officer took a moment before speaking again. If you wish to help us, then we must understand each other. Would you be willing to meet face to face? Not for negotiation, just for understanding. The room went quiet again. Everyone listened for the reply. We will meet, the voice answered. But we must do so carefully. Our appearance, our adaptations, they may not match your expectations. Time has shaped us differently. The officer responded steadily. That doesn't matter. We only wish to understand who you are. Another pause. We believe you are sincere. Prepare a safe location. We will send a small group. Those words hit everyone like a wave. A meeting. A real meeting. Not through screens. Not through translated voices. Actual contact. The officer asked, "Where do you prefer to meet?" The voice responded calmly. Neutral ground. Not on your military bases. Not on your vessels. Somewhere peaceful. Somewhere your world considers open. The defense team quickly suggested several options. The ship listened quietly. Finally, the voice approved one of them, a global science station floating high above Earth, peaceful and non-political, used mostly for research and atmospheric studies. It was a safe choice for both sides. We will send 3 representatives, the voice said. They will not bring weapons. They will come only with knowledge. The officer replied, "We will do the same." Before ending the transmission, the voice added something unexpected. "We thank you for speaking without fear." Those words settled heavily in the room. They showed awareness, sensitivity, humanity. Something inside everyone softened out the channel. Closed, right away, Earth's leadership rushed into action. Preparations began for the meeting. Security teams were briefed to remain calm and respectful. Scientists were selected for observation. Communication teams were assigned to record everything. The whole world didn't know what was happening. But the people involved felt the weight of history pressing down on them. Meanwhile, the ship behind the moon shifted slightly, its first movement in hours. It glided out of the shadow like a slow eclipse, shimmering faintly against the blackness of space. It didn't approach aggressively. It simply repositioned itself, facing the science station that would host the meeting. As it moved, sunlight reflected off its surface, revealing more details of its structure. It was large but elegant, powerful but quiet. Inside the defense center, some people watched the ship with awe. Others watched with curiosity. But everyone watched with the same feeling. This moment would be remembered for centuries. The senior officer who led the communication stood quietly at the window, looking at the distant silhouette of the unknown vessel. For the first time since the threat of invasion began, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, not uncertainty, but hope. High above Earth, the ship continued moving into position. Soon, the door of the science station would open. Soon, the visitors from the lineage would step into view. And soon, Earth would meet its lost family face to face. The alarms across the station kept ringing long after everyone already knew something was terribly wrong. The council members tried to act calm, but the tension in the room was impossible to hide. Every face was tight, every voice stiff, and every movement full of hesitation. It felt like the entire station had turned into a fragile shell, holding back a storm that was growing stronger with every passing minute. For the first time since the humans had appeared, the council members truly understood that they were dealing with something far beyond their expectations. But instead of admitting their mistakes, they kept trying to convince themselves that the situation was still under control. They said things like, "We just need more information," or "This is still manageable," but deep inside, one of them felt the same sinking fear that things had passed the point of friendly discussions. The quietest person in the room, An advisor who rarely spoke finally broke the silence. He pointed toward the giant display screen where a blurry image of the human warship hovered. The ship didn't move. It didn't threaten. It simply existed. Strangely, that alone was enough to unsettle everyone. He asked softly if they should try sending a peaceful message. Some agreed. Others argued that sending a message too early would look weak. And a few whispered that perhaps they had already crossed a line by voting to invade Earth. Those whispers grew into murmurs, and soon the room filled with arguments, blame, and fear disguised as confidence. Meanwhile, far from the council hall, the station workers and ordinary people living on lower decks sensed something unusual. They didn't know the details, but they could feel the tension in the air. Conversations slowed. Patrol units walked in pairs. Some people even avoided looking out the windows into deep space, afraid they might see something their minds weren't ready for. The whole station seemed to be holding its breath. On the monitoring deck, a small team of operators watched the human ship's movements, or more accurately, its lack of movement. The ship simply stayed still, like it didn't need to show what it was capable of. One operator whispered that it felt like the ship was listening to everything the station did. Another operator quietly nodded without taking their eyes off the screen. They didn't know how humans had built such a ship. They only knew it wasn't normal. A technician ran a scan to check for power signals from the warship. The results came back with something strange. The ship gave off almost no energy signature. That meant it produced enormous power without leaking any trace of it. Every species in the galaxy had spent centuries trying to reach that level of efficiency. Yet, humans had achieved it silently, without even announcing themselves. That fact alone shook the team more than any weapon could. Back in the council chambers, the arguments grew louder. Some members insisted they should prepare defenses. Others shouted that defenses wouldn't matter. A few even suggested evacuating the station. But no one wanted to make a final decision, because the truth was simple. They didn't know if any decision would make a difference. The same advisor who had spoken earlier finally said something that changed the entire rooms. Energy. He suggested that maybe humans didn't come to destroy anything. Maybe they came to warn them. Or worse, maybe they came because they already knew what the council was planning in secret at first. People dismissed the idea, but the more they thought about it, the more uneasy they felt. If the humans had been watching the council without being detected, that would explain how they appeared at the exact moment of the vote. It would explain the silence. It would explain their confidence. The room went quiet again, and many avoided meeting each other's eyes. Outside, the station's outer lights flickered for a brief second. It wasn't enough to cause panic, but it made everyone look up. The technical crews blamed it on a power fluctuation caused by the sensor systems being pushed too hard. But deep down, even they wondered if the warship had something to do with it. A group of junior officers sat together in the cafeteria, talking in hushed voices. They discussed old stories they'd heard, rumors about humans that sounded like myths. Some said humans were unpredictable. Others said they were peaceful until provoked, and a few believed humans had vanished long ago. As each officer spoke, they realized none of their stories matched. Humans were a mystery, and mysteries scared people more than enemies. One officer mentioned that he once saw a report from a scouting team that described a deserted human settlement on a distant world. The structures they found were advanced in a way no one understood. The report was dismissed as exaggeration and stored away. Now, hearing the alarms and feeling the pressure in the atmosphere, he wondered if the report was true all along. The council finally decided to send a message, not a message of surrender, but a message of curiosity. They asked the humans why they had come. They asked what they wanted. And most importantly, they asked whether the humans understood that the vote to invade Earth had not been acted upon yet. It was a desperate attempt to show innocence without admitting guilt. The message was sent quietly, without public announcement. The council hoped no one would notice, but word spread quickly anyway. The station had its own way of sharing secrets. Mechanics whispered to engineers. Guards whispered to civilians. And soon the entire population knew that a message had been sent to the mysterious warship. Then came the waiting. Every passing second felt like a heavy stone pressed against everyone's chest. People walked slower. Guards watched their surroundings more carefully. Even the air felt different, as if it carried a tension that couldn't be seen but was impossible to ignore. On the monitoring deck, the operators stared at the silent ship, waiting for any sign of response. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Still nothing. The council members waited in their private chamber, avoiding conversation. Some stared at the floor. Others fiddled with screens, even though they weren't reading anything. Each person was trapped with their own thoughts. About an hour passed. Then 2. Still no answer. Some members began to believe the humans wouldn't respond. Others feared that silence was a warning by itself. The advisor suggested sending another message. Something gentler. But before they could decide, something unexpected happened. The ship moved. It didn't accelerate. It didn't turn. It simply adjusted its angle slightly, as if acknowledging the message. The movement was small, but the entire station felt it like a punch of fear and wonder. A new signal appeared on the communication screens. It was simple, just one phrase. Not threatening, not aggressive. We heard you. The council stared at the message. There was no voice attached, no face, no emotion. Just those 3 words. For some reason, that made the message even more unsettling. The humans hadn't asked what the council wanted. They hadn't explained why they were here. They simply said they heard them. The advisor leaned forward and studied the message again. He said that the tone didn't sound hostile. It sounded patient, as if the humans were waiting for the council to explain themselves first. The council quickly prepared another message. This time they tried to sound sincere, hoping to show respect without admitting wrongdoing. They said they wanted peace. They said they wanted cooperation. They even said they admired Earth for its resilience, even though many of them had never believed that before. The message was sent. Minutes later, the warship sent another reply. We know. Those 2 words shook the council more than any threat could have. If the humans knew everything, then they already knew about the vote. They already knew the council had considered invading Earth. They already knew the details the council had kept hidden. A wave of guilt spread across the room. Even those who had voted against the invasion felt it. It wasn't guilt for the plan they had made political mistakes before. It was guilt for underestimating an entire species they barely understood. The ship remained still, but now it felt different. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like the humans were watching the council more closely than before. As the station drifted quietly in the dark, whispers echoed through every corridor. Some whispered fear. Others whispered hope. A few whispered that maybe this was the moment the galaxy would finally realize that humanity was not a myth, not a tale, and not a weak species waiting to be conquered. And deep inside the council hall, every member knew something important. Whatever happened next would not be decided by them. The humans already held the advantage, and now they held the truth as well. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was what the humans planned to do with that truth, and the waiting continued. The atmosphere across the entire station felt heavier than ever. Even though the lights were bright and the halls were clean, it felt like a shadow was hanging over every corner. People walked slowly, whispering to one another, wondering what the humans meant when they said, "We know." The words kept echoing in their minds. Some tried to ignore it, but most couldn't stop thinking about what might come next. On the monitoring deck, the operators continued watching every tiny shift of the human warship, but the ship didn't move anymore. It remained still, floating, calmly outside the station, like it had all the time in the world. The teens stared at the quiet screens, not sure if the silence was good or bad. One of them said softly that it almost felt like the ship was waiting for the council to speak again. No one disagreed. Inside the council chamber, the tension was thick enough to feel. All the members sat around the long table, their expressions tense. No one wanted to be the first to talk. They were afraid of saying the wrong thing. They didn't know whether the humans were angry, curious, disappointed, or simply watching. The uncertainty was harder to handle than any threat. Finally, the advisor who had spoken bravely before cleared his throat. He suggested that maybe the humans were testing them, waiting to see if the council would admit their mistake. The room went quiet again as everyone absorbed that thought. Admitting the mistake publicly would change everything. It would show weakness. It would upset many people. It would reveal to the entire station that the council had made a decision without thinking through the consequences. But doing nothing felt worse. While the council hesitated, something unusual began happening. Throughout the station, the people who lived on the lower decks started gathering near the windows, staring at the human ship. They didn't see danger in the ship's design. Instead, they felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. Some of them whispered that maybe humans had come not to punish the council, but to stop the galaxy from making a terrible mistake. The idea spread quickly, calming some of the fear. A small group of workers who repaired the outer hulls talked amongst themselves. One of them shared a quiet theory that humans might have known about the invasion plan long before the council voted. He pointed out how carefully the ship was positioned close enough to show strength, far enough to show restraint. The others listened, nodding slowly. They didn't know whether to feel relieved or more nervous. Back in the council hall, arguments slowly restarted. Some members wanted to send another message to the humans, one that explained everything in simple, honest words. Others argued that the council needed to hold its dignity. A few suggested gathering more information first. But deep inside, even those members felt it. The humans already had information, probably more than the council wanted them to have. Advisor raised his voice slightly, urging them to stop hesitating. He reminded them that the humans were not acting aggressively, even though they clearly knew everything. They had not harmed anyone. They had not issued threats. They had only responded with calm, short messages. That alone meant something. The council finally agreed to send one last message. This time, they wanted to be honest, even if it meant admitting their mistake. They wrote a message explaining that the vote had been rushed. They explained that fear and misunderstanding led them to think Earth was a threat. They said they regretted the decision and hoped the humans understood that no action had been taken. Sending the message felt strange. Some members felt ashamed. Others felt relieved. And a few felt that something inside them had changed forever. They were no longer dealing with a rumor or a myth. They were speaking to real humans who had stayed silent for years, watching from far away. The message was sent across space to the warship, and then the entire station waited again. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. But this time, instead of anxiety growing louder, something different happened. The station grew quiet. People went to the windows again, watching the ship with curiosity instead of fear. Guards loosened their grip on their equipment. Even the council members sat calmly, waiting for any sign of response. Finally, a signal appeared. The warship sent a new message. This time, it was longer, though still simple. It read, "We watched because we hoped you would choose peace. We waited because we believed you would understand. And we arrived because the vote you made could lead to harm, not only to us, but to you. The message continued. We are not here to fight. We are here to make sure you choose a wiser path. The entire station went silent. Even the council members stopped breathing for a moment. Many of them expected anger. Some expected disappointment. But none of them expected the humans to speak from a place of calm responsibility. The advisor read the message again and again, trying to understand every layer of meaning. Then he said something that surprised everyone. He said that the humans weren't warning them, they were teaching them. They were showing the council what true strength looked like. Not force, not threats, but patience. One of the council members suddenly stood up and said that they needed to respond with gratitude. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Many others agreed. And for the first time since the humans had appeared, the council felt united. They prepared a reply. It said, "We understand now, and we thank you for your patience. We will choose peace. We hope this moment becomes the beginning of something better for both our worlds." The message was sent. And once again, they waited. This time, the humans responded almost immediately. We accept. The room filled with a sense of relief so strong that some members leaned back in their chairs, breathing deeply for the first time all day. The advisor smiled softly, knowing that the station had been given a rare chance to avoid a conflict that could have changed everything. People throughout the station heard about the humans' message. Instead of panic, the news brought a sense of peace. For the first time, they felt hopeful. The workers on the lower decks smiled at each other, saying that maybe the myths about humans weren't myths at all. Maybe humans had always been trying to prevent war, not cause it. The monitoring team watched the ship carefully. Slowly, finally, the warship began to move. Not forward, not toward the station, but away, calmly, smoothly, as if saying a quiet goodbye. As it drifted further from the station, the lights on its hull glowed faintly, reflecting like stars against the dark space. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it left a deep impression on everyone who saw it. The ship didn't vanish. It didn't warp away. It just moved silently until it became a small dot in the distance. That dot eventually disappeared. Into the darkness. Inside the council hall, the members sat quietly, looking at the empty screen where the ship once appeared. They didn't speak. They didn't argue. They simply sat, knowing they had witnessed something rare, a moment where strength was shown not through power, but through restraint. The advisor took a deep breath and said, almost whispering, that the council must learn from this. He reminded them that every decision they made carried consequences not only for themselves, but for everyone who lived under their authority. The room slowly emptied. The halls grew quieter, and the station returned to its normal rhythm, though people knew in their hearts that nothing would ever truly be the same again. In the days that followed, small changes began happening across the station. People talked more about peace, less about conflict. Leaders discussed cooperation instead of control. Even ordinary citizens felt inspired, telling their children stories about the silent human ship that came not to harm, but to guide. The council rewrote many of its policies. They opened discussions with other species. They held public gatherings and admitted their mistake honestly, without hiding behind excuses. The honesty surprised many, but it also strengthened trust across the galaxy. Word spread humans were real. Humans were powerful. But most importantly, humans chose patience over aggression. And that changed everything. As for the station, life moved forward quietly. But every person who had seen the human ship never forgot that moment. They remembered the silence, the patience, and the calm strength of a species they once believed was only a folktale. And far away, somewhere in the endless dark of space, The human ship continued its silent journey, watching, waiting, and hoping that the galaxy would choose peace again. When it mattered most,